Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to the 6th lecture of International Marketing subject. In our previous lectures, we had highlighted the importance of doing business in international markets for a firm as well as for a country whose firms are successful in international markets. We had seen that it takes superior skills to succeed in international markets, which in turn requires better jobs, better paying jobs, more value additions, more technological innovations, and hence more advanced countries. So in today's time, where the markets are globalizing very, very rapidly, the competition in every area is internationalizing. The domestic markets are also opening up to international competition. Then the countries as well as the firms have no choice but to gear up to succeed at international stage. And in today's world, for economies and for countries and for citizens of a country to become prosperous, it is inevitable to build up firms that are capable to succeed in international markets. So it's very crucial for firms to succeed the competition and international stage. It is also important for policymakers to adopt such policies, programs, and support the domestic firms to succeed internationally. If that does not happen, the countries' economies cannot progress. It is also important for managers, for engineers, for professionals to get education, to get training, and to develop their capabilities that are relevant to international competition. So the scope of this subject of international business is multifaceted. It's not just limited towards managers. It is also very relevant and very important for policymakers. It is as important for managers, owners of the firm, as it is for the employees, if they have to develop their skills and if they have to become relevant for today's workplace. So with this perspective, we are discussing this international marketing subject from all these important angles, from management perspective, from employment perspective, as well as from policy making perspective. So it is really important to understand thoroughly what it takes for firms of any country to succeed in international markets, and the type of competence that is needed, the type of support is that is needed for firms to succeed in international markets is not only created within the firm, but modern research has now consistently identified that a lot of support from the environment, especially from the home country, is needed to make these firms successful. Without proper support from the home markets, from the home governments, from the home locations, it's not possible for firms to really succeed in the international arena. So increasingly, we are seeing that more of the successful firms are emerging from such countries which have adopted proper policies and where proper environment exists for these firms to develop their competence and capabilities and then to move into international markets. So more of the successful international firms are emerging out of Western countries, in particular United States, UK, Germany, France, and other developed Western nations, as well as from Japan. So a lot that is common to these developed countries that is helping their firms to succeed in international markets. So really, it will not be enough for us to just concentrate on the firm to understand what it takes for a firm to succeed in international markets, what a manager perhaps needs to do, needs to acquire to ensure that the firm under his or her management succeed in international markets. We also really need to learn how policymakers can help, how countries can help, how population can help their firms to succeed in international markets. And without the help of policymakers, without the support of respective governments, without the support of respective population, in today's world, it's just not possible for local firms to develop their capabilities to succeed in international markets. So in today's lecture, we are going to discuss some of the key theories which help to explain why certain firms are successful in international markets. Well, theories basically is an explanation of a phenomena. Scholars and researchers over time study phenomena, and in this case the phenomena is success of firm in the international market. So these theories try to explain this phenomena, explain why these firms have been successful and why other firms have not been successful. By knowing these theories, then we can develop our understanding more properly, more comprehensively as to what it takes for firms to succeed in international markets. So we are going to discuss some of the important theories which have attempted to explain success of firms in international markets. One of the oldest and classical theory of 16th century, which we refer to as mercantilism, explains that wealth of any country is basically determined by the hoardings, the accumulation of gold and silver. But that used to be the case in earlier times. That rich nations, more strong nations, were defined by amount of gold and silver assets that they had. Hence, according to this 16th century philosophy, to succeed economically, the countries needed to maximize the holdings of gold and silver. Well, then holdings of gold and silver can be maximized by maximizing the difference between exports and imports. In those times, well, gold and silver being the precious metals were the medium of exchange, unlike today where we have currencies. Gold and silver was used for exchange of goods and service and for their payments. So if the country was exporting, the payments it received was in gold and silver. And if a country was importing, it was paying in gold and silver. So by maximizing the difference between export and imports, any country, any kingdom could increase its holdings of gold and silver. So according to this 16th century philosophy, it was better for countries to promote exports, to adopt policies and steps that favored exports and that discouraged imports. So the kingdoms and kings used to take steps to enhance their exports by various policies and means and programs and discourage imports. And accordingly, they could enhance their holdings of gold and silver. So with more gold and silver, they could build large armies, strong countries, and expand their kingdoms. And nations could become affluent. But then there were a lot of drawbacks in this approach. by favoring exports and by discouraging imports, the local customers, the local population was not better off. The products and services in domestic market used to become expensive, lower variety, poor quality, by restricting competition in domestic market. So local population was not better off. And to support and subsidize exports, the governments levied taxes on local consumption and on production of goods and services for local consumption. So one sector of the economy was made to subsidize the other sector, which was the export sector. Hence, the domestic production became inefficient because of this burden of supporting exports. And not all people in the kingdom were better off, even if the nation was able to build holdings of gold and silver. But then, the real wealth of any society is not just the wealth of the kingdom or the wealth of the state. The real wealth of the society is wealth of every citizen. If every citizen is better off, if across the broad business and trade is flourishing, then the countries could have had large tax base, because many more people, many more businesses were earning profits. And with the large tax base, the kings or kingdoms could have strong revenues, and hence strong kingdoms. At the same time, by unfairly subsidizing one sector, and that to an export sector, it could never become competent, because inefficiencies would prevail with any protection and with any form of subsidy. So countries eventually ran into a problem that their domestic manufacturing sector, domestic business sector also did not improve, and at the same time their export competence also did not improve as much. Developing export competence requires firms as well as countries to concentrate in such areas where they have advantages, and to import or trade in such products and services with other countries where they do not have real competence or real advantage. So seeing that, Adam Smith in 1776 forwarded his famous theory of absolute advantage. He proposed that in order to develop the real wealth, countries should focus to produce such products and services where they have natural advantage, where they can really become competent naturally because of their advantage over other countries in one form or another, and trade with other countries or import such products and services where other countries have advantages compared with this specific country. So in this case, countries could elevate, could improve their specialization, then every country would produce those products and services where that particular country had an advantage over other countries in the world. And hence more efficient production, more effective production. So these advantages, these competencies could be natural. For example, southern countries may have raw materials, like oil-rich countries have oil. And oil is abundant, is cheaply available, is abundantly available. So it's more suitable for such countries, such oil-rich countries, to concentrate on oil-based industry, petrochemical industry, and other upstream and downstream industry which relates to or is linked to oil-based industry. Similarly, there are countries where there is abundance of labor, where population is huge, and hence natural advantage in such areas which are labor intensive compared with other countries where populations are small. Certain countries have natural landscape, beautiful areas, fantastic weather, ideally suitable to build tourism industry. Then there are other countries which are existing on busy shipping lanes or air routes. For such countries, it is ideal to develop shipping industry, ship repair, or chandelier industry servicing ships, or develop airline businesses if the country is existing on busy air routes. So there is a natural advantage. Advantage can also be acquired, which countries acquire over time. For example, today we see there are few nations in the world which have developed exceptional competence in information technology or other technological skills such as electronics or pharmaceuticals or chemicals. Well, then there are certain other countries which have acquired skills over time in arts, in soft areas. Certain countries have built infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So these advantages can be based on natural advantages or acquired advantages. So if countries just focus on such industries or such firms which are based in the area where nations have a competitive advantage compared to other nations of the world, then it is more likely that their firms will be internationally competitive. And that competence would be based on natural or acquired or real competence. Hence, really strong efficiencies can be developed. And then this country can then import other goods and services from other countries where it does not have a competitive advantage. This way, in a free market, the overall trade in the world would expand, all the member countries become affluent, and since firms, according to Adam Smith, would be concentrating in areas where they have natural advantage, hence no requirement for undue subsidies or support, no distortion in free market situation, and hence a true capability and true competence can be developed and sustainable. And then eventually the wealth of the nations would also increase. So he advocated that real wealth of society is the wealth of all citizens. And that is created by the capability to create products and services, capability to add value, which firms and nation can sell to others. And that worked. That worked. But then some other problems emerged with this theory. What if a big nation has advantage in a lot of areas? For example, large developed countries, if we take example of United States, or perhaps UK, or Germany, or Japan, or France. These are not only advanced countries in today's times, but they are also very large. And their capability is in many, many areas. But then they have limitations of resources and limitations of firms. So when nations have advantages compared to other countries of the world in many, many areas, which they can not really concentrate in every such area, then if a nation tries to concentrate in every area, it's going to dilute its resources and competencies. it requires any nation to focus its resources over time to develop real capabilities and real competences. And if a nation sees that it has opportunities in so many areas and it tries to concentrate in every area, then it may fail to develop real competence in any one of the areas because the resources would be diluted and the focus would be diluted as well. So this problem was addressed by new theories which emerged in early 19th century, which advocated the concept of comparative advantage rather than absolute advantage. That fine, nations may have advantages compared to other countries in many, many areas. But then in certain areas, they have more advantage compared to other areas. That their capability to add value in certain industries and earn profits is much more compared to some other areas. But the ultimate objective of any firm or any policy in a country with respect to international marketing, international business, is to enhance the welfare and well-being and prosperity of its employees, its publics, and its citizens. So naturally, if someone has an advantage or opportunity in more than one area, but in one area, the opportunity to add value is much more compared to other area, then by concentrating on the first area, where the opportunity to enhance value, to add value is much more, is going to allow the nation or the firm to earn much more profits. We can take an example of a country. For example, country has small population, has a lot of wealth, and has technological capability and superiority in aerospace as well as in agriculture. If country produces aerospace products, aircrafts, planes, can sell to the world. At the same time, if country concentrates resources and funds and money and its own people towards agriculture, then it can sell successfully agriculture products because the country has comparative advantage both in aerospace as well as agriculture production. But if same units of resources, funds and people and land is applied in aerospace, the returns are far higher because of its opportunity for higher value addition. Whereas the same unit of resources, people, land, funds are deployed, say, towards agriculture industry, then the return on those units, those resources, those investments would be comparatively much less than if the country and its firms concentrate on aerospace. So therein comes the concept of opportunity cost. That there can be many opportunities, but certain opportunities give better returns on investments and resources deployed vis-a-vis other opportunities. Then the firms and the policymakers and the nations are better off if they concentrate on such opportunities where the returns are higher and leave other opportunities where returns on the same assets deployed is less. So by doing this, the countries, the nations, and the firms can become more prosperous. And today also we see that advanced countries also require their economy to constantly grow. Every nation, however prosperous it is, requires the wealth of its citizens the wealth of its firms to keep growing. Growth and profitability of firms is the ultimate measure of success. So if countries and firms are very successful, making a lot of profits, for them to achieve even higher profits next year requires them to move towards certain areas where there is higher value addition. Opportunity for the firms and for the nations to add more value. So generally we see in technological industries, in service sectors, opportunity to add value is much higher compared to labor-intensive industries. And hence, rich nations, more advanced nations, industrialized nations, successful nations, and at the same time, advanced firms, successful firms, rich firms have no choice but to keep on pursuing more and more such areas where they can achieve better value addition for the same resources deployed, in order to ensure that their well-being, their profits, and the wealth of nations is growing year after year. So the theory of comparative advantage brought in the concept of opportunity cost into the Adam Smith 17th, 18th century concept. Where would a country have comparative advantage? Well, then amendment to this theory brought in the concept of factors proportions. That the country would often have comparative advantage in area where it has abundance in factors of production, in key factors of production. If one of the key factor of production is capital, certain industries are capital intensive industries, they require a lot of money. For example, steel making aircrafts, even building brands in today's world require a lot of capital to start with. So capital is an essential input or a resource that is required. So certain wealthy nations have a lot of capital, while other nations have less capital. Their firms may have less capital. So for the firms and the nation that have more capital, they will have a natural comparative advantage in such industries which require large capital as an essential resource. Technology industries, industries where huge scale economies are required, like automobile manufacturing and so on and so forth. Whereas the firms or countries which do not have abundance of capital, it will be a problem for them to try to focus in industries which require a lot of capital, because it will be more difficult for them to succeed against such countries and such firms which have abundance of capital. Similarly, countries which have abundance resources of oil, they will have a comparative advantage in such industry where oil is used as an important input and abundant input. Because they have oil and it's cheaply available to them, easy for them to succeed in these industries and earn higher value addition compared to other countries and companies which do not have access to cheap and abundant oil. Similarly, in certain industries which are labor intensive, availability of labor is an essential factor of production. So the countries where population is small, or they have achieved maximum employment already because of their success and affluence and technological advancements, as is the case in many industrial countries. So these companies which are existing in industrialized countries and the industrialized countries, it's not feasible to concentrate on such industry which requires labor as an essential input, a factor of production. So it's suitable for only such countries where abundance of labor is available, like in case of our country, with large population. It's naturally suitable for us, for our firms, to concentrate in areas, in industries which are labor intensive, because labor is abundantly available, and hence the price of this factor will be relatively cheaper. So more chance for our firms and our nation to succeed in such industry international markets where we have abundance of factors of production. So the theory of comparative advantage modified Adam Smith's theory of absolute advantage and suggested that the wealth of nations and firms in international markets, in globalized world, can be really strongly enhanced if they concentrate on areas where they have advantage compared to other countries, and particularly those areas where they can create better value addition compared to other areas of advantage. And which will be those areas where a nation may have a stronger comparative advantage? Well, would be often those areas where it has access to abundance of essential factors of production. Another country-based theory really identified and tracked success of many firms in international markets. And very surprisingly, it was observed by the middle of last century that firms from successful industrialized countries are often trading in other successful industrialized nations. That was quite surprising. But theoretically, rich nations, the industrialized nations, the developed nations are better off in producing technological products and services. And the nations which are less developed, not really industrialized, would need to buy more of these products from developed nations. But if we really see the patterns of trade, very surprisingly we see more of the trade is taking place between rich and rich nations. And in case the nations are not rich, they are still developing countries, then much of the trade is taking place in goods and services between countries that are similar. So the opportunities for international markets arise because of many similarities. To start with, similarity in level of economic development. Well, people in rich nations require luxury products. And in our previous lectures, we had studied that tastes and demands and preferences are converging with affluence. As people become more affluent, they travel. They require technology products. They demand more sophisticated products. More type of products which are available worldwide. So if we see in rich industrialized nations, the demands are converging. Demands about telecommunications, travel, even eating habits, shopping habits, lifestyles, habitats, houses, lodgings, and the pattern of development all look the same and similar. And in fact, when we travel in advanced areas, advanced nations, we more or less see similar things. Similar brands being sold in similar way, similar consumption patterns, similar distribution systems, and so on and so forth. So these similarities facilitate and at the same time create opportunities for products and services. So it is easy for firms which are successful in one advanced nation, one industrialized nation, to be able to sell the same products and services it has been selling in the domestic market, in the same way it has been selling in domestic market, to sell in other industrialized countries. Hence, quite often we see firms from advanced nations, from industrialized nations, are able to find opportunities for their products and services in other equally advanced and industrialized nations. Similarly, cultural similarities create opportunities. Countries which are similar in cultural backgrounds, in the way they live, in the way people behave and spend their disposable incomes. Similarity of religious beliefs, similarity of cultural practices, common history, similarity of language. All these similarities create similar opportunities from products and services. Hence, the firms which are successful with more cultural products in domestic markets can also easily sell similar products in other markets around the world which are culturally similar. So we see firms from our own countries naturally expanding their business through exports or through direct investments into such areas of the world where there is a lot of cultural similarity. We have basmati rice. Where do we sell this basmati rice more of the time? To where the people have eating habits and the tastes similar to us. But then other countries which consume rice but culturally different and their tastes are different may be requiring other types of rice, and hence little if any market for basmati rice. And same applies to our apparel industry, our fashion industry. Where our fashion products are really going in the global market is where there are similar people with a similar cultural background, similar economic background than people living within our country. So these similarities in countries also allow and help and offer opportunities for firms to successfully sell products and services. That's why we see that bulk of the trade and most of the expansion of domestic firms are in such international markets which are similar in technological aspects, in economic aspects, in cultural aspects, in aspects of infrastructure, distribution, and also in aspects of rules, laws, regulation that firms find more appropriate to expand. In today's modern times, not only that similarities are required in case of economies, cultures, tastes, infrastructure, and so on. Similarity is also required in case of rules and laws and regulations. With the advent of WTO, the WTO member countries are bound to adopt similar laws and regulations concerning business and managing trade. Similar tariffs, similar taxes, no discrimination against foreign firms, especially firms from other WTO member countries, to which Pakistan is also a signatory. Each WTO member country is also essentially required to enforce patents, copyright, trademark laws, and to make the business-related contract laws and business laws of nations compatible and comparable and similar to laws which govern business and trade in other countries. So, firms of one country would find it easy to trade in any such country where the laws and regulations and rules and procedures and protections are as good, as sound, as similar as in their domestic markets. So no, it's not by choice. It is now a contractual obligation, an essential obligation for our country and for all WTO member countries to become similar in terms of governing laws, rules, regulations, and trade and business environment. And that is essentially required because it is anticipated and expected that if the situations among world countries in terms of laws and regulations become similar, it is going to help firms to expand businesses more easily, more safely around the globe. And when firms are able to expand freely, more freely and strongly into international markets, it's going to enhance international trade, global trade. And with the enhancement of global trade, the quality of products, the quality of skills are going to be enhanced because the competition will become intense. No firm will be protected unfairly from competition. No market can be closed unfairly from competition. So as such, the firms would be essentially operating in international arena, even if it is a domestic market. The firms would be required to raise their competence, their capabilities, their skills, their efficiencies, their effectiveness to international standards. And when firms strive to do that, strive to improve their capabilities, then the people within such successful firms will also prosper. Not just financially, but they will also be able to acquire superior managerial and technical skills, and hence become more relevant to their times, be able to get better salaries. And when more firms of any country are operating on international scenes, are selling products to other markets, then they will be able to generate more wealth and prosperity for their own nations. And nations would also prosper. So trade is going to expand, more firms will operate successfully in international arena, the people will become more affluent of the WTO member countries, and the member countries themselves will become rich, as was the objective of the 16th century philosophy, which really worked to achieve the wealth for the nations. So similarity is the way forward. The countries are now required to develop their infrastructure also by world standards, if they want their firms to succeed in other markets, and for other firms to succeed in and come and invest in their domestic markets. If a country is not developing its infrastructure, its rules and regulation by international standards, by similarity of international standards, then the country is going to suffer on two fronts. Its local firms will not be able to modernize. The local firms will not be able to achieve scale economies. The local firms will not be able to build brands. The local firms will not be able to develop human resource skills, the marketing capabilities. They will also not be able to build the capital base required essentially to compete in international markets, because international markets inherently are more complex. the country will lose also on the second front, that it will be able to attract only little foreign investment, because foreign firms will not find similarity of infrastructure, appropriateness of infrastructure, similarity of environment will not be there, and hence foreign firms will be reluctant to invest into the domestic market. So it's a very highly relevant theory if it is combined with the theory of absolute advantage and theory of comparative advantage. Together, these theories identify a comprehensive environment that is required, a comprehensive direction of policies that are required within any country that essentially would help not only their domestic firms to gain the capabilities to compete successfully in international markets, but by doing so, the countries will also be able to attract foreign firms to invest in their domestic markets. It is highly crucial for countries, especially developing countries, to attract foreign investment, especially direct investment. Direct investment is different from portfolio investment. In portfolio investment, as we discussed in our last lecture, it's a passive investment, where the investor is essentially investing into stock market of a foreign country, into bonds and loan market of the foreign country, or the money market of the foreign country. Is not really involved into the management in any way in foreign country. So any investment which also brings in at least 10% voting rights, that means participation in management, qualifies to be called as a direct investment. And these direct investments are very crucial for any country to attract. Because direct investment not only bring in the foreign capital, these investments also bring in technology and skills. And since the foreign firm is also involved in management, so it also transferred management practices. So direct investment not only brings capital and technology, it also brings in managerial expertise. And all these three things are required to succeed. Developing countries which are very successful in attracting foreign investment, especially direct investment, also get an opportunity to improve the competence of their domestic markets and domestic firms. Because if successful foreign firms are operating in domestic markets of developing countries, then they are also becoming a catalyst in improving the skills of local population, managerial skills. They are also instrumental in enhancing the technological base of the country, and they are also helping to improve the capital base of the country. And local firms which are working in cooperation or in competition with these foreign firms also develop their managerial skills, their learning, their business profile, and their economies. So, foreign direct investment is a leading indicator of a country's success or potential in creating products and services which it can sell to other nations around the world. This just not applies to developing countries. Even in the most advanced countries, in the West or in Japan or South Korea, Taiwan in the East, or even the more recent example of Chinese development, these most advanced developments are also happening because of foreign direct investments. Even the most close sectors of such technology industries like defense industry are also dependent on foreign direct investment for their continuous capability development. It's not possible even for advanced countries, industry and firms to be able to remain continuously relevant to international markets without being able to attract foreign direct investment. And to attract this direct investment, according to the country similarity theory, the countries and its policy makers have to ensure that they become more similar to the markets of advanced countries in terms of their economy, economic management, policies, rules, regulation, consumption patterns, infrastructure development, distribution systems, rules, laws, policies in every crucial aspect. So these country theories together provide us a comprehensive understanding and explanation as to why certain countries are exceptionally successful in creating firms that eventually succeed in international markets. Thank you. Khuda.